MGuitarArchitect from Meldaproduction is one of the most complete guitar and bass plugin suites that I've ever seen. That being said, there's really a lot to learn inside of that plugin. So today, I'm going to walk you through some of the features of the plugin and help you get started in creating your first preset. Why don't you join me? MGuitarArchitect is a full suite of tone shaping tools for guitar players and bass players. I'm talking amps to cabs, cabs to pedals, effects, and all sorts of utility tools all inside one plugin. You can build simple signal chains, or you can get as crazy as you want. Plus, with a highly customizable signal routing system, you can stack tones or create wide stereo effects at the click of a mouse. I should mention that this video has been sponsored by Meldaproduction. They asked me to help you guys learn how to get started in MGuitarArchitect. If you're discovering this plugin for the first time, not to worry, you're going to learn about all sorts of features on MGuitarArchitect, but I always recommend try before you buy, and Meldaproduction is great like that. They offer free trials on all of their plugins, so I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out to see if it's right for you. And if you're ready to start building some presets, well, let's get rolling. In the global section, you have an input control, dry-wet mix, which I suspect you won't be using much with this plugin, and an output setting. What you also have is the doubler. This magic button can turn a boring mono signal into super wide stereo guitars. I'll dive into that a bit more later. Before doing anything, use the input analyzer to ensure your guitar's levels are optimal for the plugin. Always engage this first before using presets or creating your own tones. Plug your guitar directly into your interface or however you normally record a DI signal, and make sure you set the input to an optimal level. Click Analyze Input Level and strum your guitar nice and hard for a few seconds. Don't be afraid to give her. Once the plugin adjusts to your input level, you can click the button again and proceed to shape your tones. If you're starting with a pre-recorded DI track, just choose a section with the loudest parts, loop it, and then click the Analyzer button. Once your levels are set, I highly recommend going through the presets. Meldaproduction always ships their plugins with a ton of presets. It's a great way to learn how the plugin works, and once you get familiar with it, you can modify the presets and make them your own. So when building presets, it all starts with the grid. This series of boxes is where you build your signal chains. Starting with the input, you have 4 independent lanes and your output. You can add modules by simply clicking on an empty box and choosing the module you want to add. For example, I can choose an amp and then a cabinet. All of the available effects are sorted into logical categories. In default mode, each block is routed to the closest module above it in its lane. There are quite a bit of routing options which I will demonstrate a bit later in the video. If I want a second amp, I can do the same thing in the second lane. I can add an effect and another cabinet. I can mute a lane simply by clicking on its corresponding number. Now let's dive into the parameters section. This big area is where you see all of the parameters for each module. You can choose different amps, cabs, pedals, etc., and then adjust their parameters here. You can use the categories feature to sort available choices by their characteristics, or you can roll the dice. So you don't get confused, the amp block contains amplifiers, of course, but it also contains tone shaping pedals like boosts, overdrives, distortions, and fuzz pedals, and things like that. You have 3 sections of effects: Stomps Main, Stomps Effects, and Studio. Here, all of the available effects are sorted into these logical categories. Just browse through them to see what's available. Once you've chosen your effect and set your parameters, then it's time to get familiar with the settings window. To access this, all you do is right-click with your mouse and this box pops up. There is a bit to get familiar with here. If you want to delete a block, you can simply click Delete. If you've got a killer effect working and you want to copy it to another lane, simply click Copy. Click on an empty block and click Paste. There are some other more advanced features here that you can dive into once you've mastered the basics. Now let's take a look at the routing system. This input section is part of the routing system. In this simple example, I have an amp in lane 1, a gate, and a cabinet. And I have this second cabinet in lane 2, which you can see is routed to the input, which is the default setting. If I add another amp in the second lane, this cabinet automatically routes to the new amp. If I right-click on the cabinet, the input is set to auto, which sets the effect to automatically route to the closest block in the same lane. But let's say I only want one amp to feed both cabinets. I'll delete the second amp, and the cabinet's routing reverts back to the input. If I right-click on the cabinet and choose Input 1, the cabinet will connect to the closest module in lane 1. In this case, the first amp feeds the gate, and then the two cabinets, which is exactly what I want. If I move the cabinet up and down in its lane, you can see that it always connects to the closest block above it in lane 1. For example, if I want the second cabinet to be routed directly from the amp but bypass the gate, I move it up here. As you get deeper into the plugin and start creating more complex signal paths, this will come in handy when you want to create some custom signal flows. So now let's talk about the doubler. Now, doubling your guitars is a common trick to get those super wide guitars, but what if you're looking for a way to work quicker, or perhaps you've inherited a project that only has one guitar in it? The doubler creates a virtual second guitar that you can process like a second part. The smart algorithm in MGuitarArchitect doesn't just copy the guitar part. It creates enough differences as if it was double-tracked, but with far more accuracy. Looking at the lanes, you can process your recorded guitar in lane 1, and the second lane is the virtual second guitar created by the doubler. You can give it its own signal path as if you recorded it yourself, but MGuitarArchitect handles all of the technical details, so all you need to worry about is shaping a great tone. Lastly, the mixer module found in the utility category is the last step in completing your preset. You can balance the volumes between each signal chain and pan each lane as you desire. In this example, I'm using the doubler and have created two unique signal chains of amps, pedals, effects, and cabs, and I'll use the mixer to polish my final tone. Click on a blank block below both signal chains in lane 1 and add the mixer from the utility category. The first thing I need to do is to assign my two channels to the mixer. To do that, you right-click on the mixer block to get to the settings, and then turn on the inputs you want to process. In this case, it will be inputs 1 and 2. As you can see, the last block in each chain now feeds the mixer. Make sure to deactivate the output to lane 2 as it will send an unwanted signal to your final output. Clicking on the mixer, I have simple volume gain and pan controls, so I can balance the levels between the two amp chains and pan them where I want. Once your preset is complete, you want to make sure you save it so you can recall it for future projects. Go up to the Preset button, choose the folder you want to put your preset in, click Add, and then give it a name. Voila! You just saved your first preset. Let's listen to a couple of tones I created in MGuitarArchitect in the mix. As a final tip, I'll say that you need to watch your levels all throughout your signal chain. There's a lot of different gain stages there, whether you're looking at the amplifier, the pedals, the cabinets, the effects, and every module has some sort of volume control. So as you're building up your signal chain, just make sure that you're keeping those levels in check. Well, if you know Meldaproduction like I do, then you know there's going to be a ton more to discover inside of the plugin. But hopefully this video has given you a good starting point so you can start creating your own tones in MGuitarArchitect. If you are new to the plugin and haven't tried it yet, I will put a link in the description. Like I said, Meldaproduction offers free trials on all the plugins so you can check it out and see if it's right for you. If you do have any thoughts or questions at all, that's what the comments section is for. And if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, I've got another one waiting for you right here. If you really want to help the channel, check the description. I've got all sorts of affiliate links. I'm on Patreon if you want to do a deeper dive with me, and I've got Lonely Rocker merch. It's all in the description, and it all helps. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video.